This isn't my story. It happened to my dad back in the 80s, before I was even born. His first wife had recently passed away, which naturally, in turn, made him very lonely since she would usually join him while he was traveling. Anyways, he was going down I-75 from Detroit to Knoxville, hauling cars to be sold down there. He was on the outskirts of Cincinnati when he saw a girl hitchhiking that he decided to give a ride to. He didn't really give much detail about her, only that she was quiet and kind of sketchy. He wouldn't have picked her up, except that he wanted someone to talk to, and not just the guys on the CB. About an hour goes by, and he's regretting his decision. Like I said, she was quiet and not much for conversation. She had told him she wanted to go all the way to Knoxville, but he was hoping to leave her in Lexington because he was getting a bad feeling from her. By the time they approached Lexington, he was happy when she said she was hungry. He planned to stop at a truck stop and buy her a meal. He said he was going to pay for her lunch and then say he had to use the restroom and slip out the side and take off. Only reason he was buying her meal was because he felt bad about leaving her. So they get there and eat. He pays and goes to the restroom. As he's leaving, he looks around to make sure she's still at the table and hasn't noticed him. She isn't there, so he took it as a good sign that he was in the clear. He hoofs it to his truck, only to find her in the lot, getting into a fight with another trucker. She's wailing on this guy, talking about how her boyfriend is going to come out and deal with him. Well, my dad pulls her off and has no clue what's going on, but the guy she was hitting stands up and starts yelling about how he caught her trying to break into his truck. Next thing my dad knows is another guy, who he described as a Bubba type, comes around the other side of the truck with a shotgun and fires it into the air. My dad pushes the lady to the ground and runs for his rig, scared for his life. He thought they would think he was the boyfriend she was talking about and go for him. He gets into his rig and starts it, and peels out of there as fast as he can, which wasn't very fast at first, but fortunately he got away. It wasn't until he hit Knoxville that he finally looked through the cab and noticed the lady had left her bag in there. He went through it out of curiosity and found that she had a knife and a small revolver in her handbag. He hated to think of what would have happened to him if he had gotten her to where she wanted to go and was no longer useful to her. He also never picked up another hitchhiker again. I travel a route between Southern California, Nevada, and Arizona. Lots of open space and desert out there. Some might find it maddening, but I actually enjoy all the space and the empty landscape. Most of the time, when I need to sleep, if I've been doing a late shift or something, I know of a few empty roads that lead back into the desert, and I'll sleep there. The sky at night is absolutely amazing. No city lights, and the sky is lit up with stars. Well, one of the times, when I was doing a late night run, I decided to go back on one of those roads. I keep water with me to freshen up and whatnot, so I did that and enjoyed the view for a while smoking a cigarette. Put it out and crawled back into my cab to get some shut-eye. Around 15 minutes later, I hear a woman singing. I check my radio to make sure it's off. It is, and my phone isn't playing any music either. The singing gets louder, like it's getting closer. I turn my key to the ready position and turn on my headlights to see if I can see anything. There's nothing there, so I turn them back off. That's when I see something moving out of the corner of my eye. There's good light from the stars, and the moon is half full, so a bit of light from that as well. I didn't get a good look at the thing, but it was standing on 2 feet and was wearing clothes that flow. It reminded me of a dress, the way it fluttered around the thing. I didn't know what to make of it, and frankly, it kind of freaked me out. I sat there and watched this thing sing and move back and forth. There were no words to its song, only like a melody, which was very odd. It started coming closer, and I was getting a funny feeling. I decided to get the hell out of there, because what weirdo sings and dances out in the desert all alone, in the middle of the night? I'm not saying it was a ghost or something, because I don't believe in that stuff, but definitely someone with mental problems or something like that. I started my truck and headed out of there. The way I turned my truck to get out made the headlight shine on the person out there. I got a better view this time and almost shit myself. She looked human enough, but where her face should have been was nothing but black. Maybe a trick of my mind, or something was covering her face, but it scared me half to death. I left and made sure to sleep at a truck stop that night. Never seen anything like what happened that night before or since. I still occasionally sleep out on the back roads, just not that one anymore. I was a route driver for a major soft drink corporation a few years ago. Now, a lot of drivers just stick to a particular city or part of a city, but I was in a small town and my route took me to multiple other small towns with many miles in between them. My shift started at 5 in the morning, so during a lot of the year, I was out driving before the sun was even up. It must have been about mid-November, and sunrise was a few hours off still. Got to my first destination by 6, and usually I would meet the person who opened the gas station and make my delivery as they were prepping. This day though, the woman didn't show up until 6:30, right before I was ready to leave and move on with my shift. So the woman pulls up and gets out. I'm trying to tell her I don't have time to make the delivery now and need to move on. She doesn't even acknowledge my presence. She looks rough. Hair is all tangled, cigarette hanging out of her mouth, and her uniform looks like she just threw it on. I noticed her hands were shaking as she reached into her pocket for the key. In fact, they were shaking so bad that when she went to unlock the door, she dropped the keys. I asked her if she was all right, and she didn't answer me. She opened the door and went straight in. I stepped through before she could turn and lock it again. That's when she finally said something. "You need to get out of here," she said. I replied with something along the lines that I do because I'm now behind my route, but wanted to make sure she was fine before I left. "He's following me," was her response. I kid you not, as soon as she said that, a beat-up 80 sedan pulled into the parking lot. Some dude in a tank top and track pants, wearing gold chains around his neck, got out of the car. Stereotypical douchebag look, with the greaseback hair and everything. All the lady said was, "Too late now, call the cops." I didn't know what to do. She didn't move. She kept staring at the window with a look of fear on her face. Thoughts jumbled up in my mind about what I'd just gotten into, until I was shaken out of it by the sound of metal being smacked. The creep had taken out a crowbar and was tearing apart the sides of my truck. After that, I ran to the phone and dialed 911. The operator was trying to calm me down and get info from me at the same time, but every time he hit my truck, I cried out for him to stop. The guy outside kept screaming in between hits on my truck about how could she leave him, look how much she means to him, and that he couldn't live without her. After 15 minutes of beating up my rig, he dropped the crowbar and started crying. I was standing next to the lady now, sitting on the phone until the cops got there. She started to open the door before I grabbed her hand and told her not to. The guy then got up and walked back to his car to get a brick. He threw it at the gas station window, which caused it to shatter. Fortunately, the police arrived in time before he tried to get in and they arrested him. I called the soft drink company and had the police talk to my boss. The cops then took my statement, and I even got called to be a witness at the trial. The guy got put away on destruction of private property and intimidation. It turns out he was a huge creep and was beating this woman. When she tried to leave him, he completely went crazy. I don't remember how long he was put away for, but if you ask me, it wasn't long enough. Back in the early 2000s, I was a long-haul trucker going coast to coast. I had a load I was taking from Dahlgren, Virginia, to Port Hueneme, California for the Navy. Normally, when the company I worked for was contracted for these sorts of jobs, we would roll in a convoy, but this time they had me do it solo. Before you ask, no, I don't know exactly what was in my truck, and I never asked. These places were testing centers, and all I know is that the cargo was in a locked container, and I was too scared to try and take a peek. I was taking the I-40 west, and it's about a 40-hour straight haul if you don't take any breaks, but it was mandatory to take them, so the overall trip would be around 4 days. Anyways, I was on the east side of Albuquerque when chatter comes across the radio about massive road construction in between Albuquerque and Flagstaff. I decided to go south and take Highway 60 to the 260, then back up I-17, trying to bypass it all. It was late at night when I had just passed Springerville. I was going to go a bit further and then find a rest stop to sleep at. This part of the highway comes right alongside the Apache Reservation, and I was on the highway when all of a sudden something jumped in front of me. Brakes locked up, tires squealed, and I fought hard so the truck wouldn't jackknife. Even then, I felt the truck rock as it ran over whatever jumped into the road. Naturally, I got out to see what I had hit, fearing that it might have been a hitchhiker or something. All I saw of it before I hit it was that it was tall. When I got out to look, there was nothing there. Dumbfounded, I looked around for any signs of blood or skin or anything that would confirm that I'd even hit something like I thought I had. On the grill, there were some tufts of hair that appeared to be dog-like. It was then that I heard something talk to me. I say something because it didn't sound like someone. The voice sounded halfway between a growl and speech. I ran back to the cab to get my flashlight and the revolver I kept under my seat for emergencies. I still wasn't sure if I had hit something or not. Maybe the voice was someone in a lot of pain, or maybe it was a wild animal that was hurt, and my mind was playing tricks on me. Either way, I thought I couldn't just leave them in misery. I went around back this time, checking the undercarriage, since it probably would have been dragged underneath. Still no sign of anything. But that's when I noticed a slight hum coming from inside the trailer. I opened up the trailer to see if the cargo had been damaged. Of course, I couldn't get into the shipping container. Still, I checked the outside to make sure there wasn't any visible damage. There was no visible damage, but when I touched the outside of the container, it was hot enough that I had to pull my hand back. The humming got louder and louder, and I heard the growl talking come closer. I couldn't make out if anything was being said, because the cargo was getting so loud. I was torn between checking on the cargo that might have been broken and checking on the talking that was getting closer. Both of them scared the hell out of me at this point. I was about to get out of the trailer because the noise was becoming unbearable, turned to exit, and a tall shadow fell across the open trailer doors. It was a full moon out that did cast some good light. Now I was really stuck. I know you can't tell an object by a shadow, because the shadow will be bigger than what is casting it, but this thing was huge with long, thick arms. Heat from the cargo box was radiating onto my back now. The pitch of the humming had increased to ear-splitting, and there was a huge creature outside. I didn't know what to do, and I was scared that whatever I was hauling might blow up. So I tightened my grip on the gun and decided to make a run for it. Right before I reached the door, though, something big and hairy ran past. At the same time, the cargo let out a high-pitched, mind-bending squeal. The percussion knocked me to the ground, and I heard the thing outside scream. I was disorientated for a good while, and assumed whatever was outside ran off. I never did find any other traces of it besides the fur, and didn't get a really good look at it. Only reason I assume it might have been a Skinwalker was because of where the event took place. I filed a report that I hit a wild animal, and the cargo didn't act up for the rest of the trip. Must have turned it on somehow when I hit that thing, and it only fired off once. I did get debriefed on what I saw and heard, and the official explanation was it was some sort of supersonic test weapon. I'm pretty sure I can disclose that now. I've seen things on Discovery and whatnot talking about the military testing such devices, so it's kind of common knowledge. No, I don't think it was a weapon to hunt skinwalkers. That was just a happy accident that may have saved my life. I've been transporting timber for a while. Started in my mid-20s, and I'm a little past 30 now. There are some dangerous situations I've been in on those small mountain roads, taking the timber down to the freeway. At the time, I was working for an operation hauling wood out around Hinton, Alberta, back up in the Rockies. It had rained earlier that day, but we drive in all sorts of conditions, and thought nothing of it. It wasn't even a particularly heavy rain. Going up that morning, everything was fine. They loaded up the bed with the crane, and away I went. I slid around a few corners as the mud gave way. Nothing really to worry about. You get used to compensating for such things with experience. It wasn't until about halfway down, where the grade gets steeper, that things became hairy. There's this one part of the road where there is a sharp turn right at the end of the slope. Tires broke free a few times on the way down, and I was finessing the brakes. Something caused my load to shift right before the turn. This pulled me too far the wrong way. The mud slid under my tires and I went over the edge. Round and round I went, must have flipped about 5 or 6 good times, and ended up with my driver's side against the forest floor. Glass was everywhere, cuts and bruises all over my body. I had a minor concussion because the side of my head whacked into the driver's side door. They were sending us down in half-hour intervals. I only hoped the next driver wouldn't come crashing down on top of me. I tried to get to my radio, but my left arm was broken. The pain, coupled with my concussion, made it impossible to think. There was no gas smell and nothing seemed to be burning, so I figured I was safe from any kind of explosion. There was nothing I could do to get out, and I think that was the scariest part. With my broken arm and fuzzy head, I couldn't even get out the passenger side. I was alone, with nothing but my confused thoughts, thinking this was it for me. It took them 2 hours to get me rescued. The first 2 drivers down were so busy keeping themselves on the road, they didn't even notice where I'd gone over. The third one noticed something was wrong and radioed that he thought someone went over. It was too dangerous for him to stop, but at least he got me help. They came up the road with an ambulance. They had to winch me out, since walking down was too steep. I recovered with no lasting injuries. I'm glad it wasn't worse, but yeah, sitting there by myself with no one to help me was about the scariest thing to ever happen to me. I remember I'd pulled into a stop outside of Helena, Montana for the night. It was late fall, end of October, early November. There had been a light snowfall that evening. There were other trucks at the stop as well. Some had their lights off. Others, you could see the light from their phones as they did whatever it was they did to unwind from the road. I went into the stop to brush my teeth and take a quick washcloth bath, then got back into my cab to settle in for the night. I was woken up around 2 in the morning to some loud banging in the lot. At first, I thought it was someone closing their door or something like that, but it continued for a while. Looked out the window, and it didn't seem like anyone else noticed the sounds. It would come and go, usually 3 or 4 loud bangs, then a minute or 2 of silence, then 3 or more bangs. Scanned around and couldn't see anything. It was annoying, but then there was a 10-minute pause between bangs, and I tried to go back to bed. Next thing I know, the banging is coming from right outside my truck. This time, it sounded like it was right at my door. So I looked out, and there was a guy with patchy hair, kinda like he had the mange. It was splotchy and cut at different angles all over. He was pulling on the door handle while also banging on the side of the door. I knocked on the window to get his attention. When he looked at me, I could see lines and cracks all over his face. His eyes were devoid of life. The lights were on, but nobody was home. I yelled at him to get lost. He just looked at me and smiled with a mouthful of broken and missing teeth. I puked a little in the back of my throat. It was one of the most disgusting mouths I've ever seen. After yelling at him a few more times, he started to wander off down towards the road. I was the last truck in line, so I guess he started walking since there were no other trucks to bang on. Didn't see him the next morning. He must have made good time, or gotten picked up by the police or something like that. Either way, it was super creepy. I was on I-70, in between Columbus and Dayton, Ohio, when I had a blowout which forced me to pull over and wait for road service. It can take a while for them to get to you, which can be frustrating. I had been waiting for about an hour when I noticed someone pull up behind me. It was a beat-up old blue van, definitely not road service, so I sat back and relaxed. About 5 minutes later, a man who looked to be in his 40s came up and knocked on my door. I rolled down my window and asked if I could help him. He started stammering and said I seemed to be in some sort of trouble, and he asked if there was anything he could do. I told him I had road service coming, and there was nothing to do since I had no tools, and it would be too heavy for either of us to lift. He started making small talk, asking where I was from, where I was going, asking how much my rig could haul. He seemed harmless, if not a little strange, but I actually kind of enjoyed the company. We kept talking when I noticed out of the corner of my eye someone walking from his van to the back of my truck. "Is he with you?" I asked the man. He got a little nervous and asked what I was talking about. When I tried to open the door, he pushed it back shut. That's when I heard a loud bang come from my trailer. I tried to open my door again, and he pushed it shut, then drew a gun from his pocket. He kept it very close to his body to make it hard to see from the road, and told me to be cool. They were quick and done in 10 minutes, then took off. Of course, road services got there 5 minutes later, but I'm glad they got there when they did. Who knows what would have happened if they interrupted the robbers. Two years ago, I was taking a load from Denver to El Paso. It's a 10-hour drive, so about a full day. I had to make a stop in between, so I was pulling into El Paso pretty late, 10 or 11 p.m., somewhere around there. I had called ahead and told the place I was delivering to expect me late, so that wasn't a big deal. The place where I had to drop my cargo was on the other side of town from where I entered, which was about another 45 minutes away. Driving along, doing my thing, when a couple cars come speeding up past me, whooping and hollering. One of them had a guy hanging out the window with a bottle in his hand. I let them pass with no big deal. Another mile later, and I catch up to them. They're swerving in and out of traffic, just being a nuisance. One of the cars slows down and gets behind me. The other one gets alongside of me. The one behind me starts speeding up and slowing down. I really can't get too much faster to get away, because I don't want to be a danger myself. The one on the side starts throwing bottles at the side of my truck. This was really freaking me out now, because I don't know what else they're going to do. They're clearly drunk and causing a scene. I use my cell phone to call the police and report them. They say they have an officer on patrol about 5 miles away. The next few minutes seems like an eternity as they pelt my truck and threaten to ram me from behind. When I saw those red and blues flash from behind, it was a huge relief. The one behind me pulled over, but the one that was throwing bottles took off. A few more police cruisers came from the other direction, then flipped around when they could and gave chase. I'm sure they got the one that ran, but I don't know what happened to them. I kept going and delivered my cargo. I couldn't wait to get back home the next day and see my wife.